Welcome, everyone. This is Contagious Games Podcast, episode number 5. We have Pete, Kyle, Matt, and Todd.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
All right, the first topic I dug up today was next generation games coming out. Better sound, better graphics, better game design, staying name. And this is causing devs to fear that with all the new advancements in technology coming out, our games are going to get more and more boring because our game design is staying the same while everything else is upgrading. Do you guys think that causing game design to morph and change is going to help this, or staying the same will just be what it is?
How would we change game design?
Morphing it to help games create better games.
I don't really feel that we are changing game design. I think we are adding so much more demand. What people don't realize is the countless hours that go into all of the artwork for the games and the animation, and then the game design is there, but now we expect better AI and such. So there's just more to put into the game.
One thing that sort of bugs me about games nowadays is the constant recycle of every asset that they've ever used when it's very obvious that you can see the recycling assets.
I mean, you don't like your blue dragon and your red dragon and your green dragon and your purple dragon, and
it can be interesting if you change the game enough, change the story enough, or something of that sort. But it just gets frustrating to see the same things over and over again. Like, for example, with the Unreal Engine, when it was first being developed, there was the really horrible texture pop-in that you would notice in every single Unreal Engine game back in the day, and it was annoying as hell.
so we may not have as much of that. I hear that our characters are going from 10 to 15,000 up to 30,000 polys, which is good for our artists, but is requiring yet again more effort to make our characters look pretty.
Yeah, we're getting better writing, better visuals, better audio, but with our game design for just other things, it's not evolving enough to stay with this current thing, and these group of devs are really complaining that we need to step it up for making things less gamey, is what they keep using this adjective as gamey, where I guess it feels too arcadey. Maybe they wanted to feel more interactive as like a more perfect sim, and they
to
wanted
do
to
that
evolve.
yet again requires more time. Basically, our game cycle is about 1.5 to 2 years, maybe less, and it really should be 4 years, maybe more.
Yeah, I can go with that.
Yeah, and with that comes longer development times. The more perfect you want a sim to be, the longer development times are going to come with that. The longer fans are going to have to wait. That's going to cause even more problems for game companies.
It means there's more room for indie developers to get a market if there's so long in between
Hopefully.
AAA releases.
I think indies are going to push the way in this because they seem to start pushing more just one brilliant mechanic along, and then you'll see it filter through other AAA titles. But this main mechanic that indies start pushing through, whether it's some new way to shoot or look through a game, it's going to start evolving our way we think of how to design games as well.
I think one of the problems that people only want the first-person shooter, real-time strategy game, or role-playing games. We're really stuck. The gamers, in a way, control the market, and they buy like what everybody's bitches about EA, and that's fine. Bitch about EA, but because they keep producing Call of Duty games. So when they finally they said, look, we want something new. The gamers wanted something new, and they were given Mirror's Edge and Dead Space. And I know Dead Space did really well, but everybody still that holiday went out and they wanted to buy Call of Duty. Like the sales weren't good enough for the different games. Not that Dead Space failed at all, but it was not Call of Duty. Everybody, people vote with their money. And so in a way, the gamers are to blame a little bit for it as well.
Yeah, in the industry, popularity wins. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, especially with AAA titles, those companies are very they're not going to go out on a branch for games that they don't know if it's going to sell well or not. They know Call of Duty sells well, so they're going to stick with that.
Yeah, the venture capitalists look at this is just an investment. They don't care if it's a cool game. They don't care if you love to play it. It is an investment, and that's what you have to keep in mind. So there's always the battle between the investors who have all the money and then the designers who want to make the coolest thing ever.
That kind of touches on my other topic that I looked at, AAA developers versus indie developers. There's a lot of people, journalists especially, putting out that game developers, AAA guys are really against indie developers, and this isn't the case at all. AAA title people are very not they don't take it. They really don't take risks at all. Where indie developers, you're free to do that. You're free to take as big as risks as you want, to be as foolish as you want, and learn from it. And AAA developers really respect indies for this. And I love this new article I was reading today about AAA guys and versus indie guys.
So I kind of think about Interplay when they first were releasing games, making cool things like Descent back in the DOS era. Their slogan was by gamers for gamers, because they were gamers and they wanted to make games they wanted to play. And then, of course, they became super big, and it became what the venture capitalists wanted us to play, or whatever was safe to buy. They knew they could make money. So there is too much money involved in these new AAA titles, especially looking in what we're going to be facing with this next generation. And indie developers do have the freedom to experiment and try new nifty things. And they are gamers for gamers. It's the original Interplay all over again. And I like to see that.
Yeah, and I especially love the Kickstarter, the rise of Kickstarter. It's absolutely awesome to see games like this getting funded by the public and then getting developed and released. It's just
funded by
fantastic.
fans.
Yeah.
They want to see the game. It's ridiculous to deny that. And I hope
there's
more.
There's a quote in here about it's from a few developers, but it says BioWare, Epic, Bungie, 343. Some of the greatest discussions I have around the office is what next new indie game IP is going to hit the roof. And that's what they like to look for.
Of course, because they're gamers that love games. They want to see something new and different. We love our first-person shooters, but let's face it, we want something a little different.
I wonder when the first-person shooter bubble is going to pop. I wonder what game genre is going to be big next.
It'll never pop. There will be different genres that'll always bubble up, but first-person shooters, RPGs, RTSs are here to stay.
They're pretty
locked
down.
As long as real life is first person, they're going to stick around.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, gamers have a hard time. We've boiled ourselves down to that, and we've been playing that for the last 10 years. And so gamers actually are not accepting of new things. I mean, you have the hardcore people that love, to try the new indie stuff, but core gamers are not interested in Fez. They're not interested in something weird and unique. They only like what they recognize and what they're used to seeing. And with my game design students, I see this all the time. I recommend some unbelievable titles that they should all play to analyze the design, and they never play them.
Well, I think it falls along the same lines as technology, in that the theory of technology is if you make something too far ahead of its time, it won't do well at all because people don't understand it. I think it's the same concept for video games, where as we can evolve to a point and make better first-person shooters in different formats slowly rather than making some crazy concept of a first-person shooter that nobody understands.
And sometimes it ends up being it's a good idea, but it just doesn't get implemented well, and that's another problem that we have. So what is it? I can't remember the name of the game. There's a game that you could stop time, slow time down, fast forward time.
Shift?
It was a first person. Time Shift. Okay. So that's a great idea, but it wasn't implemented in a fun way. Therefore, from now on, no venture capitalist will ever invest in a game like that.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
They messed it up, but a new company could do a better job. And that happens way too often. Fracture allowed you to sculpt the terrain,
Yeah.
which is the tool that you use in any level editor to sculpt terrain. By the way, it's nothing new. It's been around since the mid '90s. That was given to you as a gun, but they didn't do anything interesting with that concept. I would
Yeah,
love
it
to
was
see.
only in select areas you could use it in.
Yeah.
It would have been way better.
So that's a problem. Is that a first-person shooter guy will a fan will buy it and say, "Man, this sucks," and then they want nothing to do with it. They want something new, but when they get it, it's not well developed.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Red Faction. You can, well, in the first one, you could like shoot holes in walls and like tunnel through the rock and go wherever you want. But the sequels just kind of, you couldn't really use it anywhere. You were very limited in it.
The most recent
And they
one
haven't really
got
done
turned into a
anything
shooter.
since. Yeah.
I heard there was a deathmatch level that could be completely destroyed to the point it was just a box when you're done.
Yeah, you could destroy a lot of the terrain in Guerrilla, but it was really mostly just extra add-on stuff in Armageddon that you could destroy. Like, there were pillars that were added onto the level you could destroy rather than the level itself. But I loved Guerrilla. That was a really, really fun game.
So with the development of the new systems, the problem is we're getting new hardware that can push graphic envelopes beyond belief, but yet again, the dev times, they're not giving enough. It's not like we're adding dev time or the teams. I mean, the games are costing, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 million dollars, whatever it costs. And it's like, well, at this point, we need even more money in order to make the games look that good and put in all of the depth that you expect out of the game and the quality.
I know Assassin's Creed 3 costs around $200 million.
200, Jesus.
Jesus.
Wow.
But they'll make their money back. So yet again,
Oh,
venture
they made their
capitalists
money back like threefold.
will see that and they say, oh, I could invest in something like this. All right, so I do want to bring up, because I am a huge arcade fan, it does need to be mentioned, there is a 100 yen, an arcade documentary. And I'm looking forward to that. They're going to be focusing on the culture in Japan for arcades, which is a little different than things are here in America. For example, Dragon Quest had a card. Well, it was an arcade game that, if you can imagine playing a role-playing game as an arcade game, take a moment to think about that. And so you would feed cards, you'd go buy cards, and you'd feed those into the game, and that would be your equipment and characters that you use to battle. So things are very different for the arcade in Japan. In America, it has died because after the kind of the PlayStation N64 era, there was no need to go to the arcade because the home games were actually better than what was offered in the arcade. So that kind of killed the arcade. So I think it is interesting to see that.
I can't unsee 60-Minute Hero when you said RPG arcade.
I thought the 30-second hero. Is that
Oh
what it's
yes,
called?
30-second
Yeah, 30-second hero.
30-second hero was
Half minute.
amazing. Half minute hero. I personally don't have time to play a role-playing game. I'm not opposed to them. I have nothing against them, and I think they're a blast to play. But this constant level grind, I'm tired of just grinding. So in that game, it was kind of nice. I could play role-playing in such a short period of time. And so, anyways, check that out when it does come out.
I haven't.
Although, go ahead.
I'm surprised that arcades haven't made a comeback here in America.
It's tough. You have to give a player an experience that is better than what they have at home. And if you have a PC, you're upgrading your 3D card every couple of months. So you have the latest and greatest technology on the planet.
One thing I've always thought of when it comes to modern day arcades would be the multiplayer experience. Would be a lot of fun to go someplace and play games with your friends or something of that sort.
The only way they would really be able to do that, though, is if they would start like using the Oculus Rift and it just making like giant MMOs really in a room that would basically gather everyone there, and they would act out all that stuff. Because that's the only way they would bring people in because otherwise you can just play it at home, and
The
why
mech
why
warrior
bother?
pods, where everybody's all linked together in this cool mech get-up.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
BattleTech,
it
whichever
would
it is.
probably like the cost would exceed like what they would make from it.
So I'll give you an example of somebody doing that, and what we have GameWorks here in downtown Seattle, and at GameWorks they have linked up a Sega racing game. I want to say it's Virtua Racing. I'm not 100% sure, but they've got 8 to 10 machines that you sit in that are all networked together. But I never see anybody actually playing the game because it's very dated. And yet again, that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest problems. Although Sega is releasing a brand new multiplayer, it looks like at least 8 players participate arcade game. And it is a Sonic marathon game, and it actually has treadmills, which you're supposed to sit and run
Oh
on.
yeah, I saw that.
You forgot the most important part of GameWorks, though, Todd, and that's they serve beer there, so they get you drunk first, and then you can make all sorts of bad decisions with their games.
I agree, but after PAX, I go over there, and they're very busy, but people are busy eating and drinking beer, and I see hardly anybody playing the games, which is kind of sad.
So that Sonic game, marathon game, is it like a treadmill that you run on?
It's a treadmill, and I'm not sure if it's an automated treadmill or they have treadmills for the cheap end that you kind of have to propel yourself, which I
I'm
think
guessing
would
it
be the
would be one
safest
that
way to
you'd
do
have
it.
to propel yourself because if it's automated,
Yeah,
there'd be tons of videos coming out of kids slipping and breaking arms and stuff.
well, that's bringing the experience to reality. So I
It's
kind of
a good
feel
way to fight like childhood obesity that seems to be a hot topic these days.
I'm all for that, but of course, what Xbox has the now you can order your pizza from the Xbox, so we're kind of going against
Well, you can
against
play
that.
Sonic and you'll burn a few calories, and then you can order your pizza to get them back.
But the guy that sits on his couch playing Call of Duty 24 hours a day and has to keep a piss jug next to him is probably not going to play the Sonic racing game or the
Well,
Sonic
it's not
running
their
game.
target audience, anyways.
Yeah.
I also remember the time when you had us play or no, I played Sonic Riders on Kinect. Man,
Okay.
that was a workout. Just doing one race. Oh my goodness.
When I brought that into my class, which I think was well after you guys,
Yeah.
we had the thinnest guy in the class. He was actually very excited to play it. And within one race, he was so winded that, actually, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the tutorials, he was too winded to continue after the tutorials.
It was intense.
Yeah,
There's
it was.
there's a game on the Wii that's canoe racing.
Oh, jeez.
That game is freaking intense because you have to shake that Wiimote like nothing.
So in a way, this is we were talking about new technology. When you bring in new technology, I feel that designers don't know what to do with it. So when we had the Wiimote
Yeah.
up here, everybody's like, "Oh, shake the Wiimote! That's what's so exciting. That's what we want to do for a game."
Waggle.
Okay, shake the other guy. You shook more than the other guy. The Kinect was kind of the same way. They had all of these games, but it's like, oh man, you can actually be the controller, and they didn't think about the fact that the gamers don't really want to move that much. So I feel like I actually think the Sonic Riders on the Kinect is a very fun game, but
Yeah, it
it's
was.
also very difficult on the body. You have to really get into shape to kind of really get into that game. So they pushed it too far. It was too much motion, too much, and that seems to be a big design flaw. What the Hulk Hogan wrestling game on the Kinect is the same thing. It's too much movement, and actually, it's just a Simon Says game. You just kind of mimic the extreme movement.
Yeah. So we mentioned the Oculus Rift, and Todd, I've been wanting to ask you, what do you think of the Oculus Rift?
Uh, we have had a virtual reality headset since the early 90s. In fact, Duke Nukem 3D, which is awesome, worked with a virtual headset that would allow you to look around. But the technology was crap back in 93 or 95, whenever that thing came out. So I'm glad to see that we have it coming back. But we have 3D televisions now, which we also had in the 80s, but we have it now. And so your 3D effect is taken care of. But I like the concept of being able to look around in virtual reality. The problem is, in a first-person shooter, I don't know how beneficial it will be.
Yeah.
But I will say, and I'll throw it to you guys later, I will say that somebody mentioned bringing back the space shooting simulator, so something like X-Wing. And I do feel the Oculus Rift would actually be most beneficial in that type of video game, but that type of video game died with the 90s.
That's true.
It really did.
It's too bad. But anyways, what do you guys think?
I think it's really really awesome, and I think it'll be fun with more of the adventure style games. I'm I'm thinking like MMOs, World of Warcraft would be kind of cool with it. You could look around the world while you're walking your character through the world, or even something like a Legend of Zelda style game would be really cool to be able to control the camera and look around the world as if you're inside of it.
Yeah, I think that would be a great. Or racing games. I know those would be awesome. Feel like you're actually
That would be cool.
inside the car. Or even piloting games, so you feel like you're in the cockpit. Those types of games would succeed on something like that.
First person shooters, I'm not so sure of. I have yet to see anything that interests me in Oculus Rift first person shooters, but
I
I
would
see.
feel that there might be like a little lag in there, that the other games, that lag wouldn't be crucial, where first person shooter, a view lag is a big thing.
One thing
We
I
also go ahead.
one thing I could see it if you had a peripheral like a light gun or something that you were holding and you were pointing that around as your physical person while you're looking with the Oculus Rift. I could see that maybe.
Well, it's funny that you say that because in the 90s they had virtual reality machines and they had a deathmatch game and you stood in this weird little circular plastic chunk with a big helmet on and you had a controller that was a gun and you would run around and you would look around and you would try to find and shoot the other players. So they even had it networked. So I kind of feel the technology was really clunky. In fact, they even have, you should look it up, not now, but just for giggles later on. There is a virtual reality Pac-Man, which is pretty goofy.
That's weird.
So it's weird, but it works. If you see it, it makes sense, but I won't get into it. Anyways, look it up. So we actually had that and it just kind of crumbled away. It was expensive to run. And so I'm curious if this is going to take off or not, because we have had all of this technology before just with crappier games. I mean, the video games didn't look as beautiful. So I'm kind of curious if it will explode and take off. Also, keep in mind, you have to lock this thing down on your face. Uh,
Yeah.
in the 90s, the virtual reality headsets for PC, which with a whopping 300 by 300 resolution, it was really bad, was actually a thing that would sit so you did not completely block out all sight. And I kind of wonder if we're going to have a lot of people using the Oculus Rift and then all of their friends pulling pranks on them because they can't actually see anything while they're playing their video game.
Another game that I think it would be fantastic for would be Mech Warrior.
Yes, it would be. That
Yeah.
would be pretty nifty.
Yeah, any game where you sit inside a cockpit or a seat of some kind would be awesome.
So I officially was not too interested in the Oculus Rift until I saw that they have a Virtual Boy emulator, and now I may have to buy one. I specifically wanted to play the SD Gundam Dimension War game, but that game will cost me about $600 to $1,000. So now I will be able to actually, if I buy that, I'll be able to play it without having to spend that much money.
I didn't really get too into the Virtual Boy emulator. I remember as a kid, I walked up to it and looked into it, and I was like, oh God, that's horrible. Even back then, I thought it was
Yeah,
horrible.
it was pretty bad. And also the biggest problem is the Game Boy was so successful, they were trying to market it as another boy item. And so everybody kind of thought it was portable, and there's nothing portable about that thing.
No.
I
Nothing at
remember
all.
seeing it. It's freaking huge.
Yeah, and it gives you a nice headache. But anyways, I thought it was interesting that they already have an emulator Virtual Boy emulator, which is actually the 3DS should have all the Virtual Boy games on it, just for their virtual console, because it does the same thing, so you get the same effect. And I will say, for the 3DS, I have played a lot on it, and if things move a lot, the whole 3D effect gets kind of lost. If it's kind of a slower paced game, you notice the 3D effect. But if you're moving around a whole lot, it just kind of all, even though it is 3D, it kind of blends into itself, and I don't feel much difference.
Yeah, that's pretty much my same outlook on 3D in general, really.
So also we have to worry for Oculus Rift, the designers making sure that we're not whipping our heads around so violently to look around. So that's why a simulator would probably be better than a first-person shooter. And then you
Yeah.
got to ask yourself, how popular are simulators versus first-person shooters and real-time strategy games, or not? All right, so let's see what else we got here. Pete, did you have another topic for us?
I do not. We covered both of my topics.
Okay. So I'm going to bring this up. So XCOM, originally they were going to release a first-person shooter, which pissed off a lot of fans because it was one of the best strategy titles ever, and they turned it into a first-person shooter. Fans got really mad to the point that they canceled the shooter. And then they released a modernized XCOM, which is probably what they should have done. They did that. Now everybody has it, and they're happy. Like, they got what they wanted. So now they're creeping back with releasing the shooter now that everybody has been satisfied. And I think this is very interesting for game design because it shows you how you have to control your fans. Because if they would have just released this game, everybody would have been outraged. But because they re-released a strategy title, fans can like take a breather, and then now they can release this title.
I don't like the thought of taking a game that wasn't a first-person shooter and making it a first-person shooter. I really, really dislike that.
Well, I actually think it can work. The problem is that you have such a strong fan base that wants one thing, and that is a major problem. I do think I actually am a fan of the first-person shooter for Shadowrun. The
Yeah, that
problem
was fun.
is Shadowrun players do not want a first-person shooter. But if they could have taken that game engine and made Oblivion with that game engine, but turned it into Shadowrun Oblivion style, I think fans would be all over it and wouldn't be able to get enough of it. They'd be
Yeah.
downloading all the DLC. But because they get so angry and they hate on it, then the game just dies and peters off, and now you won't see anything like Oblivion Shadowrun style.
I just think of the what was that game called? Synthesize or started with an S. They made a first-person shooter out of it. But anyways,
They
Syndicate?
failed with
Syndicate. Yeah, that was
Oh gosh, okay. I'm thinking Synthesize. Yeah,
it.
Syndicate also should have kept with the real-time strategy. And actually, I think what made Syndicate so nifty is that you didn't have all of these nameless people, this entire table of thousands of warriors. You had your 4 badass guys, and you had to control them like a real-time strategy game, but you still had to even focus on their personality a little bit and change. You could up their drugs to make them move faster or whatnot. So I kind of like the personal approach to the real-time strategy game, which made it different from standard RTSs. And I
Yeah.
think they could have been very successful if they would have released something like that.
I
So,
am, as for
go ahead.
XCOM, I am happy that they renamed it from just XCOM because that was a really dumb name for it. Renamed it to The Bureau XCOM Declassified.
Yeah. And
It's a
actually,
smart move on their part, because even though there would have been a bunch of people bitching about it, they really wanted to bring other people into the title. The first-person shooter would be the way to go for that.
And I think that they could have released the game. They really should have converted the game into something like Valkyria Chronicles. You could have had that first-person shooter feel, but it would have still been a core strategy game. And it would have merged both worlds together, and the XCOM fans wouldn't have been angry because it would still be a strategy title.
I'm really surprised not many more people have copied Valkyria Chronicles. That was a really, really fun game.
It was, and it actually wasn't the first. That was Future Wars on the Xbox and PlayStation did the same thing. You took turns, but you moved your characters like a first-person, third-person, first shooter. You had to run around and shoot everybody, but take your turns. I also feel that Valkyria Chronicles really needed to be 4-player. The PSP titles were, but the actual PlayStation titles should have been. That way you can get your buddies around the table and shoot each other and get pissed off.
That's always a good thing.
All right, so I think it's about time that we should ask Matt for his last words.
Close us out, Matt.
Contagious Games signing out.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Like us on Facebook.
It's adorable. Apocalypse. Apocalypse. It's adorable. Apocalypse. Get ready. Adorable. Apocalypse. Apocalypse. Adorable. Nothing but a lawnmower. Nothing but a turret. It's adorable. Apocalypse. Adorable. Apocalypse. Adorable. Apocalypse. Art. Bark, bark. Uh-huh. Bark, bark. All right, it's adorable. Apocalypse. Bark, 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 bark. Alright, I'm a firefighter trying to prove I got to go to hydrant too. Keep it away from me, but I'll keep it away from you. Ow! Come out! Bark, bark! Yeah, adorable apocalypse! Yeah! Horrible apocalypse. Dogs over there with the vicious tips on the ends of the teeth and the ends of the mouth. Watch out, get a stash. Bark, bark. It's adorable apocalypse. Bark, bark. Yeah. The dog is a terror on 4 legs. Yeah. Watch out, golden hydrant. Bark, bark. Emma. Bark, bark. Bark, bark. I'm done. Apocalypse. Adorable apocalypse. Bark, bark, bark. Scary. Throw me a bone. Yeah. Bark. Do the thumb dance. Watch out for the upside down lawnmower. Up, up. The motor's going off. The time is going down. All right, adorable apocalypse. Adorable apocalypse. That's it right there. That's a good one. Bark, bark. Hey, who's next? Bark, 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 bark. It's raining bark. Stop this to me. Don't do this anymore. This to me. Some piece of shit. Someone else a chance to do this. I'm done. Bark, bark.